How about playing Lex Luthor in Superman? You enjoy playing the baddie, do you?
It's great fun. I must say, it's like a license to steal. Almost anything you do is going to be okay because he's a kind of a flamboyant character and deranged and all the things that actors love to play.
It's the best part.
Unbelievably, Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa were discovered dead at their Santa Fe, New Mexico, home. It was a mystery conclusion for a man who was once a Hollywood star but decided to completely fade from the public eye. Although authorities verified there were no indications of foul play, the question still stands. Actually, Gene Hackman wasn't just a two-time Academy Award winner. He had a history full of hidden struggles. He had been jailed for stealing, mocked as someone who had no chance of succeeding, and was known for being confrontational, never reticent to use his fists to settle disputes. He didn't leave Hollywood because his fame had diminished, but for something much bigger. Is this the final chapter in Gene Hackman's life, or is it just another mystery? Let's find out when. In 1956, Hackman married Faye Malse, a woman he once thought would be his rock, as he struggled to find his place in the film industry at the time, as he was still an unknown actor taking on various odd jobs just to survive. In the early years of their marriage, they lived a simple but happy life. Hackman wasn't just betting on his career, he was unknowingly sacrificing the most important things in his life and making mistakes that were almost inevitable. Would never make it together, so they built a house and had 3 kids: Christopher Allen, Elizabeth Jean, and Leslie Ann. However, as fate frequently decrees in Hollywood, love and success don't go hand in hand. Hackman's career took off in the late 1960s with Bonnie and Clyde 1967, and by the 1970s, he was officially one of the biggest stars in the industry thanks to blockbuster movies like The French Connection 1971 and The Poseidon Adventure 1972. However, as Hackman's fame grew, darkness hung over his family life. In a 1989 interview with the New York Times, Hackman acknowledged that being an actor makes you incredibly selfish because you spend your entire life seeking recognition, and when success comes, it's difficult to say no. The money, the fame, the temptations, all of these things were too much for a poor kid like him. Hackman also moved from one movie to another, traveling from city to city, and the children gradually became strangers in his life. The calls home became fewer and farther between, and his attendance at family dinners became a rare luxury. In 1986, after 30 years of marriage, Hackman's first marriage ended quietly, without any arguments or legal issues. Just the regret of a man who realized too late what he had lost. In an interview with GQ, Hackman adamantly admitted, "I was away for too long. I don't have any advice to give." When asked what advice he had for his son, Hackman said, "I was away for too long. I don't have any advice to give." Was this the result of bad decisions, or the unavoidable outcome of the relentless Hackman continued his career after divorcing Faye Malse in 1986, taking on major roles and remaining one of Hollywood's top actors? But behind that success, he no longer had a family by his side. Hackman lived alone for years until he met Betsy Arakawa, a pianist who was 32 years younger than Hackman and had no connection to the Hollywood world. He learned the hard way that sacrificing family happiness for success came at an unbearable cost. They met in the late 1980s at a gym where Betsy worked. There was no show, no rush, and their relationship developed naturally. In 1991, Hackman and Betsy got married because he no longer wanted his career to overshadow his family life. They chose to live a quiet life away from Hollywood and the media before finding peace. However, fate had destined Gene Hackman to experience many life-altering tragedies. Memories he would prefer to forget, including the tragic death of his father. Anna Elizabeth Hackman died in a house fire in 1962. According to reports, she had been drinking a lot, fell asleep with a cigarette lit, and the flames swiftly engulfed the house. For Hackman, the loss was more than just the loss of a loved one. It was an indescribable regret, because his mother had been the only person who genuinely thought he could pursue a career in acting. But by the time he started to establish himself on screen, she was no longer present to witness it. He rarely talked about this tragedy in public, but the pain didn't end there, though, as in 1982, Hackman suffered another devastating blow when his closest friend, Norman Gary, passed away unexpectedly. Gary was a well-known entertainment lawyer and one of Hackman's most trusted confidants, and his sudden death sparked speculation about unresolved financial troubles, leaving Hackman with more questions than answers. In a rare interview, he revealed that if he could choose one movie for his mother to watch, it would be I Never Sing for My Father, because it reflected his own life story. In a subsequent interview, Hackman acknowledged that he had devoted all of his energy to acting because he didn't want to drown in grief. During this time, he played some of the most iconic roles of his career, such as Under Fire, 1983, Hooers, 1986, and Mississippi Burning, 1988, which cemented his position among Hollywood's elite. However, Hackman didn't only suffer emotional losses, he also faced danger on several occasions in real life. Hackman was not one to be intimidated without much verbal exchange, so he threw the first punch, and the three of them lunged at each other, causing chaos in the middle of the street. One of the most memorable incidents happened in 2001 when he got into a street brawl in Hollywood while driving when he accidentally collided with another car. Two young men, visibly furious, stepped out and began insulting Hackman without realizing they were provoking a former Marine at 71. Break up the fight, but no one was arrested. This incident demonstrated that even after leaving behind his action-packed roles, Hackman had never lost his fighting spirit. However, his closest call with death may have occurred in 2012 when he was riding a motorcycle in Florida without a helmet when he was struck by a truck. News of the incident quickly spread, raising fans' fears that he might have suffered serious injuries or worse. But Hackman managed to survive, suffering only minor wounds and being released from the hospital. Rewind to 2004 after finishing the comedy. Welcome to Mooseport. Gene Hackman abruptly left Hollywood. There was no formal announcement, no farewell press conference, no grand send-off film like other legends. He just disappeared from the screen. At the time, many thought Hackman was simply taking a break, but in fact, that was the last time he would appear in a commercial film. Those close to him revealed that day that he never stopped riding a bicycle despite his advanced age. But from that point on, he never left the house without a helmet. Started to wonder why an actor who was still at the top of his game and could command the screen would abruptly disappear. Was it because Welcome to Mooseport was a box office bust, making only $14 million out of its $30 million budget? Or was he just worn out by the glamour and chaos of Hollywood? The true reason was much more complicated. Hackman had started to realize that his health was not what it used to be back in 1990, when he was taken to the hospital after being rushed there because of a severe arterial blockage. Doctors determined that his heart condition was critical and performed an angioplasty to save his life. Had he arrived at the hospital more quickly, he might not have survived. Following the surgery, Hackman was forced to change his lifestyle, but he continued to act for more than 10 years until his health problems returned in the early 2000s. He began to feel exhausted during film shoots because of the long work hours, the pressure of intense scenes, and the constant travel. Hackman acknowledged in an interview with Empire magazine that he no longer had the stamina to continue acting. He also disclosed that his doctors had advised him to avoid unnecessary stress, such as the demands of a film career, and that if he couldn't give something his all, he would rather not do it at all. However, Hackman's health wasn't the only reason he had never enjoyed the noise and spectacle of Hollywood. He had always been open about how he didn't like the way the business was run, and he detested awards ceremonies. He once told him, "Hollywood is a relentless machine, and after more than 40 years in the industry, I felt I had given enough." He stopped showing up on red carpets, avoided all film-related events, and declined every acting offer that came his way. Directors kept approaching Hackman in the hopes of a comeback, but Hackman refused to be friendly in interviews and had no interest in living under constant public scrutiny. Declined them all in a rare public appearance in 2008. When asked if he would ever go back to acting, he simply replied, "No." He joked that if a truly great script ever came up, he might consider it, provided it was shot inside his home so he wouldn't have to travel. Outside of his illustrious film career, Gene Hackman always had personal passions to balance his life. After leaving Hollywood, he concentrated on writing, painting, and personal hobbies rather than attending expensive parties or entertainment events. That gave him peace. Gene Hackman turned to writing, a passion he pursued with the same fervor he had once shown for acting. He published 5 novels, mostly historical fiction and crime thrillers, including Justice for None 2004 and Pursuit 2013. Writing not only helped him stay out of the spotlight, but also allowed him to keep his creativity alive. Even after retiring from acting, Hackman continued to make contributions in 2016 and 2017, lending his voice to 2 documentaries about the U.S. Marine Corps, the military unit he had served in. He once said that painting was a way for him to find peace far away from the hectic rhythm of Hollywood, which is known for portraying tough characters. Hackman also dedicated time to painting, a hobby he had never publicly showcased. He painted purely for himself, never exhibiting or selling his works. This wasn't just a job for him, it was a way to pay tribute to his past. Even after leaving Hollywood, Hackman remained connected to the significant chapters of his life. Few people on screen were aware that Hackman was also a professional race car driver. He participated in Sports Car Club of America races in the late 1970s and even won the Long Beach Grand Prix Celebrity Race. His most thrilling experience was competing in the prestigious 24 Hours of Daytona in 1983, while driving a Toyota for Dan Gurn's illustrious racing team. One particularly memorable event was when he drove an Audi Quattro, one of the most cutting-edge race cars of its time, in a 6-hour endurance race at Sears Point Raceway in California. As he grew older, Hackman realized that his reflexes were slowing down. You need quick reflexes, and when they start to fade, you have to stop. He admitted that he decided to retire from racing completely for health reasons, focusing instead on safer hobbies like painting. However, tragedy struck when his brakes locked up, causing his car to flip, forcing him to withdraw from the race even though he wasn't hurt. He later joked that perhaps he should have let a stunt double take his place instead. After he left the fast-paced world of racing, Hackman embraced more practical vehicles instead of flashy sports cars. He was frequently spotted driving a Toyota Tundra around Santa Fe, a powerful yet modest pickup truck that fit his down-to-earth lifestyle. Despite his advanced age, Hackman continued to cycle long distances, a habit that kept him in shape. Even in his 90s, he continued to use an electric bike to get around, demonstrating that his spirit of energy had not diminished despite leaving professional racing behind. He never lost his passion for cars. In the past, he owned a 1983 Toyota Celica GT, which he used in competitive racing. However, as he moved toward a more modest lifestyle, his collection of cars reflected this shift. Instead of pursuing ostentatious supercars, he chose sturdy, functional models that retained his unique personality, such as the Porsche Panamera, a luxury sedan with powerful performance that reflected his sophisticated taste. The Mercedes E-Class, a comfortable yet understated option for those who value elegance without going overboard. And Ford. Although his life had slowed down, Hackman never lost his spirit of adventure. He had just found a new way to embrace it. In addition to his love of cars, Hackman was also an avid American football fan, with a particular fondness for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and was frequently spotted at the stadium as a fan of the sport. Mustang Shelby, a symbol of raw American muscle, demonstrated that his passion for performance cars had not entirely vanished. Tesla Model S was a more contemporary option that demonstrated his interest in technology and the emergence of electric vehicles. Even though Gene Hackman was no longer on screen, he still found time for the things that made him happy. He rarely appeared in public, but when he did, people in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, had lived for years, would occasionally spot the Hollywood legend filling up his car at a gas station. There were no bodyguards or hordes of paparazzi, just Hackman dressed casually, going about his everyday life like everyone else. What was even more fascinating to the locals was the car he was driving a third while many wealthy actors own Bentleys or Rolls-Royces. Hackman's choice spoke volumes about him. The Tundra was a sturdy, powerful, and useful pickup truck with a 5.7 L-V8 engine that produced 375 horsepower and a TRD Forks 4 off-road package that made it capable of handling any terrain. It also featured privacy glass, Bilstein shock absorbers, and a truck bed cover. The Tundra was not a flashy supercar or a luxury vehicle typical of Hollywood stars. Even in retirement, Hackman stayed true to himself as a legend who chose to live humbly but with undeniable strength. Gene Hackman was more than just a great actor. He was a man of contradictions but sharp in every detail. He could be tough without fear of clashing with directors or even throwing punches in real life. But he could also be practical, unpretentious, and indifferent to attention. He stuck with a simple, functional Lamborghini, which perfectly reflected who he was. Disappear from Hollywood with no explanation, never pursued fame, and never attempted to please anyone but himself. He was a rebel in his career, a legend who left on his own terms. His character and style were something that not everyone could achieve. Gene Hackman was not only a remarkable actor, but he was the epitome of tenacity and an unwavering spirit. Despite being questioned and despised as a young man, Hackman became one of Hollywood's greatest legends, proving that success isn't dependent on luck, but rather on tenacity and faith. Though the news of his and Betsy's passing has shocked the world, Gene Hackman's legacy lives on his performance, his life story, and the man behind the scenes. While many Hollywood stars continue to chase the spotlight, Hackman chose a different path, leading a simple, peaceful life in Santa Fe with his wife, far from the need for attention or validation from the world. His legacy isn't just in his iconic roles like Poe Doyle or Lex Luthor, but also in the way he lived. For a more in-depth look at Gene Hackman's life and career, watch the video on your screen. Watch it now to learn the full story, and don't forget to subscribe. Legend will always be in the hearts of his fans. How do you remember Gene Hackman via his iconic roles, his unforgettable quotes, or just the way he lived life on his own terms? If you think highly of him, leave a comment with "Rip Gene Hackman" to join us in honoring a true Hollywood legend who made the industry respect and love him. to our channel so you don't miss any of the Legends Untold stories.